A young man named Kaspar was out for a morning hike in the Estonia swamp, with no idea that he was about to stumble upon something that had been buried for decades. Taking the path less traveled, he found what looked like a boat stuck in the ground. After gathering people to help dig, everyone soon realized they'd uncovered a lost piece of history. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It was a normal morning, and Kaspar was ready to explore the Estonian swamp. When he got there, the young boy realized there were two paths in front of him. The first was a popular trail for local hikers, while the other could barely be classified as a trail. After picking the trail he wanted to go down, Kaspar began to walk. It was not long before he came across Lake Kurtnamädisjarv. At 53,820 square feet, the lake was a decent size. Still, it was located in the middle of nowhere. Kaspar did not really think much about what people would use the lake for. That is until he noticed some strange markings around its perimeter. He was not sure what they could be. Kaspar had walked this path many times in his life, even though it was not a marked trail for hikers. How had he never noticed something so strange near the lake? Next to the strange markings on the ground was a rope, something that looked like an anchor for a boat. But no one brought their boats out to this lake. It was very much out of the way. Kaspar was curious though, so he dug around the mud and got the rope out of the swampy earth. Then he started to pull. He was going to need some help if the mystery object was going to be unearthed. Dropping the muddy rope, Kaspar turned around and headed back towards his home. Once he got there, he quickly explained what he had found to his parents. Needless to say, they were more than a little confused. Kaspar had no idea what he found. The rope looked like it had once anchored a boat. But where was the boat? Was it buried under the ground? And that's why he couldn't get the rope completely out from the muddy earth. As it turned out, Kaspar's parents were at a complete loss, too. They had no idea what to make of the strange tracks on the ground, or what the rope could be attached to. It was a mystery, and the local mystery Kaspar stumbled upon soon had the entire town interested. Not long after Kaspar brought his parents to Lake Kurtnamädisjarv, more townspeople showed up. They were curious what the young boy found on the off-beaten path of the Estonian swamp. The men of the town gathered around the swamp, inspecting the strange marks in the ground that Kaspar had spotted earlier that day. Heavy machinery was called in. Soon, the men spotted the rope Kaspar had talked about, thinking they could make it budge a bit more than the young boy. While the rope came off the muddy ground easily enough, it seemed as though no amount of strength was going to make it budge. While the tracks on the ground were strange, and the rope was not close to budging from the earth, the townspeople knew one thing for sure: there was definitely something submerged in a lake. Now it was just a matter of finding out what it was and getting the object topside. About a dozen strong men and women tried to pull the rope, thinking if they had enough power the object would make itself known. Alas, they were not strong enough. They were going to need some serious equipment if they were going to extract whatever was beneath the surface of the lake. Once the townspeople realized there was no way they were going to unearth this mystery object by pulling on the rope, they decided it was time to call the authorities. They were sure to bring in some major manpower and equipment. Tying the muddy rope to the bulldozer, the townspeople stood around and waited to see what would happen. Amazingly, between the huge bulldozer and the people, the object did not budge. But they were determined. And when there is a will, there is a way. By this time, the townspeople had realized there was more than one rope on the muddy swamp floor. And while attaching them all to the bulldozer did little to nothing, they soon came up with a plan. People rushed back into town, bringing their own vehicles to Lake Kurtnamädisjarv. Tying ropes to each of the vehicles, including the bulldozer, the townspeople were all going to pull at the same time. The hope was that the sheer number of vehicles and their horsepower was going to be enough to bring the mystery object to the surface. And that was not all they did. 8 hours and a lot of work later, the townspeople finally felt something under the surface of the water budge. They could not believe they'd finally pulled the mystery object up. The work was not over yet. Only a small portion of the object was showing. So, people went down to the muddy part of the lake and began to dig. After a little while, the bulldozer gave one last tug, and the mystery object finally popped out of the water. There was a collective gasp, and the object breached the surface. A lot of people knew what it was right away, while others were still confused. Either way, they ran to grab a hose to wash the hardened mud off the object. After a few minutes, the clean object revealed an open hatch. They'd finally revealed an all-too-familiar white symbol, something from World War II. They had to be sure of what they saw, though. Everyone fell silent when they realized what was standing before them: a World War II tank. They had just discovered a piece of history buried deep beneath the surface of Lake Kurtnamatysjarv in the Estonian swamp. After the initial shock of unearthing a tank wore off, everyone had one question on their mind: how did World War II tank wind up buried in Lake Kurtnamatysjarv? Beyond excited, Casper ran straight up to the tank to peer inside. Something inside the tank, floating in the water, caught his eye, something shiny. Looking at his mom, he asked, "Mom, are those big bullets?" Inside the tank, there was ammunition rolling around. There was a chance they could still be dangerous, and Casper's mom was taking zero chances when it came to her young son. Apparently, Casper's mom wasn't the only one who found the tank dangerous. Not long after it was revealed, sirens began to wail, and a camouflage truck rolled to a stop. A man surveying the tank walked up to Casper, saying, "You found it? I'm impressed. Well done. We need you to step back while we make sure it's safe." It took 2 weeks for experts to check the tank and fully extract it from the lake. When they did, they began doing research. It turns out it was a Soviet-built T-34/76A, and amazingly, it was in pristine condition for being underwater for several decades. Experts believe the tank was captured by Germans and repainted with their own symbols. In the end, the Germans probably dumped the tank in the lake so it couldn't be recaptured. Curators from the nearby Gorodenko Museum were amazed by the tank, especially its amazing condition. Restoring the tank, they found that the old diesel engine still worked, turning the tank on. Not only that, but they also found 116 pieces of ammunition. Still, nothing answered the single question on their minds: what was the tank doing in that secluded area? As it turns out, some battles happened on the eastern Estonian Narva front, with numerous soldiers and tanks making their way through the swampy marshlands where Lake Kurtnamatysjarv is located. And in the summer of 1944, it was in that location that the German forces captured the Soviet trophy tank. The tank Casper found is beyond rare, as it actually fought on both the German and Soviet sides during World War II. It was remarkable. Now, the T-34 World War II tank is proudly displayed in a war museum in the Gorodenko village.